from Significant. This is Crack It in an Hour.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crack It in an Hour. 1 hour to crack one problem once a week. I'm Simon.
I'm Jesse.
I'm Roman.
And for those of you who don't know, I feel like I got to say this every time just to be sure. One person comes with a problem. The two of us, the rest of us have no idea what it is.
Completely blind.
Today's a little bit of a celebratory one. So if you see me drinking a whiskey, you know, crack one on your side too. Why not?
Crack It in an Hour has a
crack
whole new
whiskey in
meaning.
an hour. Exactly. But let's get into it, shall we? Roman, this is yours, right?
This is mine.
The
All right,
Roman
cool.
show.
Keeper of the time. When do we start
let
the
me
time?
start the time.
I'm excited. I feel like I was in the hot seat like yesterday, which I kind of was because we like been doing back-to-back recordings. No, it was a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, I love it. I'm excited. It's
Timer
Friday.
Timer has started.
Let's go. Friday, summer. Let's crack it. So, last year, a couple of years ago, I heard a thing, which I actually think was a clip of Joe Rogan that was like circulating on the internet. That was about, it may or may not have been Rogan, whatever. It was about the fact that anyone who eats an animal should have killed an animal before.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you ever hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, and that thing sort of like stayed stuck in my head for a while. And the other day I was driving and I have no idea how I got there, but I was like, shit, if someone dropped me in the forest tomorrow and was like, good luck, bud.
Yeah.
I'm fucked. Like I don't know how to start a fire. I don't know how to kill an animal. I don't know how to recognize a berry from poison. Like I'm done. Like
This is great. I love already.
Simon's excited.
It got me thinking, I'm probably not alone, right? I'm a product of modern society.
Yes.
And it makes sense, right?
And you're French.
And I'm Français, but you know.
But that also means like, because I do think,
dude,
let's
I
keep
haven't
talking.
started. I
Oh
haven't
my
given you
God.
the topic
I'm
yet.
so excited. This is
This
great.
is gonna be a good
This
one.
is great.
So it makes sense. In 1950, 30% of the world's population lived in urban areas. By 2020, that number was 56%, and it's expected to reach 68% by 2050. No surprises.
Yes.
Rapid urbanization limits access to natural spaces, increases exposure to artificial environments. So today, in Crack It in an Hour, how do we reconnect with nature as a society?
Wow.
I love it.
And
This
I told
is
you guys
good.
would like it
I
because we have
love it.
I
such
love
different
this one.
backgrounds.
I
Like-
love
like,
this one.
We
Send
have
me
like
to
small
the
town
woods.
Pennsylvania.
I
Literally
love
grew
this
up
one.
in the woods. We have
Yeah.
like Canada, who's like only dreams to be left alone in like into the wild.
Yeah.
And you have Paris Bougie, who doesn't know how
Right.
to light a fire. So
Yeah.
it is gonna be a good one.
Yeah.
So
Oh my God.
data dump, couple minutes.
Yeah.
Where's the disconnect coming from? There's, the obvious link. There's what I said about interacting less with nature today than we did 50 years ago, and we live further away from undeveloped land. There was a study done from
That
the
makes sense.
German
Yeah.
Center for Integrative Biodiversity Research and the Theoretical and Experimental Ecology Station in France. So bear with me on that. That's where it came from. So people talk about remote work, which I thought was interesting because I was thinking remote work, yeah, like so many people were like, yeah, I'm going to go live in Idaho and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
But it surged post 2020, right? It's continued to rise, but it's leading to people spending more time indoors.
That's a good point.
And so
100%.
And so the benefits of remote work, yes, less pollution, better for the planet. There is a component there, but it's also the cost is less incidental exposure to outdoor settings. So nature doesn't necessarily mean the forest and the great outdoors. You can find nature in a, let's say, semi-urban environment.
The Santa Monica Mountains.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
LA is a very, very green city, right?
Yeah.
People don't necessarily know this, but the first
Yeah.
time you land in LA, you're like, oh,
Wait, there's a
It's
lot
green
of green
everywhere,
space. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Climate change effects. So rising temperatures, extreme weather, air pollution make outdoor experiences less appealing, sometimes unsafe. Heat waves have increased in frequency in some regions, and the number of extreme heat days has doubled since the 80s. Yeah, there was a bit of a skeptical face from Simon. I'm with you. But it's mentioned as one of the reasons. We don't need to go there, but some of it will lead us there.
Sure.
Give me 1 second. There's a very interesting theory coming up. Screen time, digital displacement. You don't need the numbers, right? We spend too much time on screens. 11 hours per day on screens.
My
Children
God.
average 4 to 9 hours. Children. So why do we want to fix it? I think there's some obvious reasons, maybe some less obvious ones. Why do we want to fix it? What are the consequences? Mental health, massive one. It's linked to increased stress, to anxiety, to feelings of isolation, not being exposed to nature.
Yeah, being disconnected. Totally get it.
Absolutely. So the flip side, when you have access to green space, you have improved mood, you have better sleep, you even have longer lifespan. This comes from the National Institutes of Health. And then the last one, which I thought was interesting in terms of consequences, environmental apathy. So there's a theory in environmental psychology that's called extinction of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so when your daily interactions with nature declines, your emotional investment in protecting it declines with it.
Totally agree.
Out of sight, out of mind effect.
Exactly.
Right? So that's the subject.
Oh
How do
my
we
gosh.
increase experiences of nature? You know, it's from visiting a national park to literally seeing, like, in London, a fox, in LA, a coyote on the street. That's an exposure to nature.
Totally.
Right? It's like, it can vary from, like, your brain, my brain immediately went to, I need to go, like, on
I agree.
a 4-day
Yeah.
trip where I walk, like,
Yeah.
just one person or alone in the woods or in the
Yeah.
mountain. It's not, it is that, but it's not
I recommend
just
that, by the way.
Yeah,
but it's not just
it's
that.
not just that,
Yeah.
right? So I'm going to stop here for the intro.
You do know the danger of this episode, right?
That I'm going to have to go kill an animal.
No, the beginning of the end of our company, because Simon and I are heading to our respective.
You're talking to two people who have
cottages in the woods.
Who love going to the woods.
I love going to the woods. I just
Yeah.
didn't grow up doing it.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. So let's, man, this is amazing. Just,
Easy, cowboy.
okay. So I like what you said. And I think it was an important thing to say, which is, like, this isn't how do we get people out into the absolute wilderness and stuff like that. It's how do we get people out in nature a little bit more. And that can be, like, literally, like, if you're in New York City, it's how do you get to Central Park more? How do you get to other spaces like that? Is that kind of the ground rules we're setting here?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more
great.
exposure to nature in any shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally,
And
we could talk about urbanization at some point and
Okay.
the future of the
Yeah.
the design of a city.
Yeah.
Right?
I have a philosophical question, which might be part of it might be actually part of the exploration more than an upfront question, but do you have to be conscious? Do you have to be in nature and appreciating it consciously, or just being exposed to it actually creates all of the
latter. Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, go to Central Park and, like, put your phone on airplane mode and look around and experience the world around you. It's literally like the exposure.
Just exposure.
Yeah.
to.
Okay. That's
And
so
I think as you
interesting.
get slightly older, you realize that.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
It's
Yeah.
even things as, I mean, there's a bit of a double thing in there, but it's even things as simple as, you know, in the middle of your workday, go walk outside. And if
Mhm.
you have the chance to walk in a park, it's going to be even better.
It's
you can
gonna be-
feel
yes.
it, right? You can
Yeah.
Totally.
right? So there's
Totally.
obviously there's the physical component
Yeah.
there about, like, walking, get your juices flowing, like getting some fresh air, but there's also the exposure to natural light, blue sky, trees, all of this.
Apologies if you mentioned this in your setup, because I was just, like, my mind was spinning, but, like, what are seen as barriers to this right now?
So, like, some of the obvious one, urbanization.
Yeah.
It's like, I think what number I mentioned, like 68 or 70% by
Yeah.
2050 or something of people on the planet living in urban areas.
Yeah.
Obviously, urban areas come with less obvious
Ugly
exposure to nature.
spaces, less nature.
Screens.
Yeah.
Massive one. We
Yeah.
spend more time glued on screens. Adults, kids. What else did I mention?
I think there is one where, I mean, I think we've actually touched on one already, which is the perception that in nature means the extreme version of
Yes,
nature.
I
I
agree.
think that's a barrier.
I agree.
And then I do think there is another barrier. One of the things that immediately popped in my head, because I think we'll probably explore the spectrum of what in nature
Yeah.
means. And sometimes that does mean, hey, go camping or go spend
Sure.
a couple days. But I think how do you experience nature but still have creature comforts? I think the absence of
that's a
convenience
good
and creature
starting point.
comfort is like one of the barriers.
That's a really good starting point, which is sort of like, what is the bridge to you can stay comfortable but experiencing something new?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's such a good question because it's like one of the biggest psychological barriers to everything new. It's like experience discomfort and newness while staying comfortable. It's like if people knew if they felt confident that they could have that comfort, it already takes down like half the barrier.
I think
I'm very surprised, but you're building a case for glamping.
I totally agree. And but the other
You
part,
see what I mean?
No,
Because
I know.
I think like something is like to go from like cold to, hey, let's go up to the middle of this crazy area and figure it out. Like that's just too big of a jump for most people.
Yeah.
And I think like what you're talking about, and this is, I think I'm going to connect a few dots here, but the urbanization of the world has created fewer of those like quick and easy relationships with nature, right?
Yeah.
Like if you lived on in a home on a farm, yeah, you've probably walked down your path and seen a coyote or something like that sort of thing. But if you're in the middle of a city, your chances of that just significantly fall down. Right?
Yeah.
So you have all these things where it's like you don't even have that like small baby step to an experience with nature anymore.
I think also as I'm going to speak as city dwellers, but like I think sometimes you feel like you're living in a pressure cooker and when you hit that boiling point, you feel like you have to go to the extreme. And that's just not,
totally.
I think it's what I get interested in is more of the introduction and exposure of nature on a more frequent basis versus just saying, hey, still do this a couple times a year, but it doesn't have to be that crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, no, how do you have it on a much more everyday scale?
Yeah.
So it actually becomes almost a ritual and affecting your life overall versus like feeling like a vacation.
Can I give you this is just running through my head when you talked about the urbanization thing and what you said too. And this is a very Canadian perspective. So if you're a Canadian, especially from the Golden Horseshoe, it's called, near Toronto, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But
Giddy up.
growing up in Canada, when you're like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, if you lived in a big city or even just a mid-sized city, generally speaking, to have a cabin on a lake was a very middle class sort of expenditure. It was, you buy the land, you buy the space. It was $50,000 or something like that. I'm just generalizing. I don't
Totally.
know.
Yeah.
But all those prices have skyrocketed. So what happens is you have these entire like classes that are not exposed to that. Like my wife is a perfect example where her grandpa built a cabin on a lake. He didn't have a lot of money. He just built this cabin on a lake and they've just had it now in the family for, I think, 70 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And now it's become something. And my children's experience when they go up in the summer to that is very what you're talking about. It's very passive. It's a passive experience of nature. It's, I'm going to sit on the dock and I'm going to hang out and maybe I'll do a bit of fishing and
really
then
cool.
maybe I'll go and read a book and this. It doesn't have to be like, all right, kids, we're going into the wild.
Yeah,
No,
survival.
but even there's like a world between a lower hanging fruit and what you're talking about. Because this is already like leaving the city, going to spend a lot of time somewhere, having the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
I think there's many ways to slice that problem.
Well, there's a
Like,
difference.
You could approach it generationally because every generation would benefit.
That's
from
true.
it. You could say, okay, what do we do for the kids? What do we do for the adults? What do we do for the elderly? Right?
Yeah.
You could approach it that way. You could say, okay, what do we do for people who live in the city and have no access, no chance to go, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
There's a million ways to approach it. Because I do think, again, urbanization, you could be like, okay, modern urban planning needs to have a percentage of X of nature.
But I don't think that's enough.
Even if it means like that the buildings need to be covered in leaves. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
That's like basically like when I went to Rio, I was like, everything's covered in leaves.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was like,
So there's many
Yeah.
ways. It's just that we're kind of trapped inside. We're trapping ourselves
Yeah.
inside. We're looking at screens.
yeah,
We're working remote, which that was
help.
one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Which doesn't help. Like most people who work remote, most not all, but end up
Yeah.
having like back-to-back Zooms from 8 to 6 and like in 30-minute increments, and then you go fucking crazy.
yeah.
Sorry, I promised I would drop less f-bombs, and I just dropped one in there.
What
Sorry,
are we,
guys.
11 minutes in?
Ah.
You'll get better. Yeah,
No.
I mean, it's the difference between nature as a vacation versus nature as part of your
Yes.
Part of your
life.
life.
And
And
I think
both are important.
both are
Yeah.
important. Yeah. And that's where you can actually explore the spectrum, because everyday part of your life is the green buildings, but then
Yeah.
but then you should go out into the world. This is maybe a little bit of a tangent, but we probably don't have the answer. It made me wonder if some of the psychological benefits of nature are also true when, you know how like every Peloton and like exercise machine started
Mm.
doing the thing where like, oh, you could run through a park. Like
Yeah.
you're like looking at nature, but you're cycling or running through it. I'm really curious if you still get some of the psychological benefits when you experience it on a screen.
So how do
Well,
we do this? How
do
do
you
we
have a
actually
stat?
crack this? This feels crackable.
Well, I think I have a few questions. Like again, if we wanted to start generation by generation, I think it would lead us someplace.
Okay.
The other bigger question we could play with before is like, how do you convince a 22-year-old who grew up in a big metropolis that's not very green, like let's say Shanghai or Tokyo, and that's been a big gamer their whole life, has a community online, very connected to modern world, but
You're giving us a tight brief. I like
but
it.
doesn't really need nature in their lives to be happy. How do you? What's the brand of nature to convince them that it's going to be interesting?
Okay, you know what that made me think of? It made me think of Pokemon Go,
oh,
which was like a
that's-
very
that's cool.
interesting.
That's a cool way of
Like
doing
just
it.
because you went there with the audience
yeah,
and the
yeah,
brief,
yeah,
but it is
yeah.
a really interesting example that I've never seen replicated either in gaming or in other subcultures, which is integrating people's, like bringing people's online worlds into
The
the
real world.
offline. And
That's
it's like,
cool.
I know we talked about this in our very first episode on aerobics, but like, you know, in other parts of the world where exercise literally just is happening in the middle of the,
Yeah.
you know, in the middle of the park, in the middle of the town
Yeah.
square. Oh, you can join this 10-minute yoga thing. Or, you know, I see now a lot of parks have the like playground equipment, but it's actually exercise
Yep,
equipment. So I see it a little bit in fitness, more in other parts of the world than in the
Mhm.
US. But Pokemon Go, like people were outside on like treasure hunts.
You gamify nature.
Gamifying.
You
It's
gamify
always about
the
a
experience of
gamification.
nature.
We always
But that
do
is interesting because we started with that group of people
Yeah.
specifically, and I actually think that's a really smart
Have you are you familiar with geocaching?
No.
No.
Oh, guys. I don't know if I assume the community still exists, but I was really big into it back in the day. And it's this enormous, it's like the original gamification of nature, but it was like this enormous community that basically would hide these little like caches around the world. And all you had were the coordinates and you would try to find it. Like it
that's
was like
cool.
literally, and
Yeah.
Treasure hunt?
treasure
Yeah,
hunt,
yeah.
but like then sometimes people, they could be big, they could be really tiny. Sometimes in the tiny ones, you just had a little rolled up scroll and you would sign your name and always leave it there. The next person could see. But sometimes they were like, you know, you'd leave something, take something.
Yeah.
So it's like, could be little
Yeah.
like whatever, silly pieces of treasure. But it was such a cool community.
That's awesome. I like
you,
this.
You
Go
went
ahead.
straight to very, very cool executions.
I know. I got excited.
What's nature about?
Yeah. Why, Simon, why do you love it?
Why do I love it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. How
I
do you
don't-
feel when
I
you're...
don't know if there's a place I feel more at peace than in nature.
Yeah.
And it's like it's truly like it's the idea of freedom and peace and autonomy. Like it's like I can do whatever I want out here. I think I told you guys about my almost dying in the Yukon a few times.
In the quicksand?
In the quicksand
Yep.
a few times. But it is that like I have complete control and freedom to do whatever I want. Now, again, I think I'm more extreme than what we're talking about,
Yeah.
which is just start to build. But like I have a video literally I can show you guys that when I went for a jog, I think 2 weeks ago, and there was a coyote running beside me on the other side of the street. And I just ran and just shot the coyote running beside me. And that was in LA. You know what I mean? So like nature is everywhere. There's
It is.
so much that's so amazing about
Can,
it.
can you, we know that story, but it's a good one. Talk about the Yukon story.
Well, okay. So when I had a sabbatical, and basically
Last summer.
And I was like, I want to go somewhere that's like as wild as possible, literally like as wild as humanly
good.
possible. And so I looked into going to the Yukon during the summer because it's the sun's up the entire time.
Mm.
And I went with a good friend of mine, my buddy Tom, and it was very like-minded. We flew up there, we rented a truck, we went out into like literally like there's this town called Whitehorse, and an hour out of it, you literally are driving by wild buffalo, wild horses. You're seeing all sorts of crazy stuff happening very quickly. And like if you want to, like to your point about like killing animals, like if you want to eat, you literally pull over to a lake, you catch a fish, you kill it, and you eat it. Like that's it's that wild still. It's absolutely incredible. And then at one point there was like we were going to go up even further north, and there was forest fires, and we're like, okay, we can't go further north, so we drove. This is a weird thing to say. We drove south to Alaska. So Alaska was actually south of us, and we drove down there. And then we just like found a place, crashed, and then got up the next morning. There was grizzly bears outside, and we waited for them
wild.
to go. And then we like went to the river, caught more fish, ate it. Like it was like legitimately like very
Quicksands. Let's
yeah.
go.
Oh, the quicksand story. Yeah, that was like literally that was okay. So we met a guy at a gas station, and we were like, hey, we want to go fishing. What do you recommend? He's like, there's this great lake. You got to just like drive. It's like really sketchy. He's like, just get off the thing, drive down a dirt road, and then stop. And then you'll know when to stop, and then walk to the end. And we're like, all right, cool. And so we drove to the thing, got to the thing, saying we walk, and it's like a half hour, but it's like you're literally like stuck in mud up to your knees the entire time. And then we finally get to the lake. We have waders on. We go step into the lake, and it's a quicksand lake. The bottom of it was quicksand. So we literally like, it went up to my chest, about my belly button. My buddy Tom, it went up to about his nipples. So we both almost died. We got out of it. Cause like you realize then that you're
Fucking
like,
insane.
oh, had we been like, you know, when those
It's
people are like,
insane.
oh, they went into nature and never
Yeah.
saw them again.
Yeah.
Like that would have happened.
Into the wild.
Very easily.
My
that would've
favorite
happened.
part
All right.
that the listeners will never be able to see unless maybe we put it on the website is when you guys left the lake and you saw just the like little wood sign like
Yeah, there's a
tacked
tiny
up to
little
a
wood sign
tree
that
that
just
just
says
said quicksand.
And we ran into that guy. The funny thing is we ran into that guy later in the week, and we were like, hey, that lake, it had quicksand in it. And he was like, yeah. We were
So,
like,
sorry for that segue, but I think it's a fantastic story and speaks to how
Yeah.
much you love being like
Yeah.
connected
Yeah.
to like real
Yeah.
wilderness nature. So you talk about freedom, peace, and autonomy
yeah.
in terms of like what nature evokes or
Yes.
the feelings, right?
Yeah.
What about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I mean it's similar. I think I feel it sounds so cliche when I say it, but truly when I'm back in Pennsylvania in the middle of the woods where I grew up, I feel like I can hear my thoughts. I feel like I have clarity, and I feel like I can breathe.
Yeah.
And it's like all of that. I feel the peace. I feel the
Yeah.
freedom. Like all I wanted. What's so interesting is when I'm there, the things that I have the desire to do when I'm home in LA, like be on my phone or watch TV, I don't actually have the same
No.
desire to do those
I
things
agree.
there. I just
Yep.
want to like lay in the grass in the sun.
Yeah.
So even I feel like my priorities shift without me, or my needs shift without me realizing it.
Yeah.
and I love it. But how
Do-
do you
do you
give that to
think-
people?
That would be different if your upbringing was like in a very urban environment.
100%. I don't think to me, this is one of those, like, I can't tell how Canadian I am. And then sometimes I can tell I'm very Canadian. And the thing I think that I find with a lot of Canadians is Canadians are very comfortable, generally speaking, in the absence of a lot more, I don't know what you call it, infrastructure than most people.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like it is like, listen, Toronto's a big city. And like, I think it's like 5th biggest market in North America or something like that.
Mhm.
But you go 2 hours in a certain direction and you're in the woods. You know what I mean?
Okay, let's think about it this way. And maybe this is just me, but like, even when I go to a restaurant in LA and it has a patio and the patio is like lush.
Yeah.
I have a little, not to the same extreme, but I have a little bit of that feeling. And I
Totally.
can't speak for somebody who was born and raised in Tokyo. And like, if they walked into sort of a lush, like restaurant experience, would it feel crazy? Would it feel insane? Would it feel good? I don't know. But I feel like I literally gravitate towards patio aesthetics that I think
Well,
are going to give me
okay.
that like,
So, and sorry for we keep talking about Tokyo. Tokyo is actually not that. Anyway, a concrete environment. But let's
Yeah,
say
that's
we can use any other big cities. I think I disagree with what you said, Simon. I think it's baked into human.
You think so?
I think it's an
Yeah.
animal, like whatever mammal, whatever we call
Primal?
it. It's primal. I think it is because like I don't know anyone, and I'm focus group of one, but I don't know anyone who doesn't like having plants inside their home.
Yeah.
mm,
Like I don't know anyone who would disagree with what you just said, Jesse.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
like loves a nicely designed patio with lots of green on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Like
yeah.
everybody feels good. Now, lots of people wouldn't go as far as, when they have some time off, go to drive
No.
like in the wilderness. That's
Yeah.
extreme,
Yeah.
right? But I think a majority of the world, even if now the majority of the world lives in urban areas, would find
Craves that.
peace
Yeah.
in spending some time in the
I
mountains or
agree.
by the ocean without
Okay.
sleeping, camping, whatever. Just
Do you
even
think?
like,
Yeah. That's
so
the thing I don't know.
I think it is primal.
So then, okay, then this would, and that's why actually your game idea is so much stronger, which is if everyone is going to be happy with the end result of being outside, all we need to do is find excuses and tricks to get them outside.
Tricks.
so it's
yeah.
Yeah, you know what I know that's
Yeah.
I know I'm always
But you know
about,
what I mean?
I'm
Yeah,
always for
exactly.
pro tricking people.
but it is that, right? Which is like, okay, game. Oh, you love games? Okay, what about this game that takes place outside?
Yeah.
Tricked ya.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Surprise.
I think we've even, briefly talked about this once. The more we talk about it, the more I think cities are really doing a lot to try to create these experiences.
I agree.
Like, because we one time very briefly talked about outside movies.
Yeah.
Like, in the
Yeah.
summer in a lot of
Yeah.
cities in Chicago, like movies in the
Yes.
park, free concerts in the park,
Yeah.
these like moments that you're like, oh, I like watching movies and now I can do it in the Hollywood Cemetery. Cool. Like I'm down for that. So I think I see a lot of it happening, which is making me like, what do you think, Roman? Part of the question is just how do we get more of it? How do we do more of that? How do we build like a bit of an industry around it?
I think there's how do we operate a bit of a shift in mindset?
Mm.
To me, we need to talk about different generations. To me, we need to talk about what happens when you're a teenager today versus what happened when you were a teenager when we were teenagers 20 years ago, right? A little over 20 years ago.
I was gonna say, I wish.
Maybe a little over 20.
Thomas?
Anyway,
I was going to let it
but
slide.
you see what I mean? I think there is a difference there because it's the hardest population to convince.
Yeah.
Like we were all at some point, most of us, I was, okay, I'll say, like just a rebel and a total dick when I was a teenager. So like if my parents had told me, go outside is going to be good for you. We're like, yeah, sure. Right.
Yeah.
Where's the skateboard?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Take a skateboard. That's going to be great. Like,
Yeah.
how do you reframe?
Well, I think
Maybe it's a trick. Maybe it's something else. But because I think adults know it, even though they maybe don't do it. So that can be solved with a few tricks.
I feel like people listening might roll their eyes, but I think nature needs a bit of a rebrand even as a term, because nature feels so like hippie and dramatic, and like it is almost the extreme. There's a difference between outside and outdoors.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
totally.
like
Yeah.
when I think about brands like REI and Patagonia and like all these brands that champion nature, it is the most extreme version. It's the
Yeah.
outdoors.
Yeah.
It's not just the, hey, grab a skateboard and, you know, be
Grab a
outside.
picnic
Hey,
blanket and a six
grab
pack.
grab a picnic blanket and a 6-pack.
Yeah.
Go watch a movie in the hall. Like what made me, when I was talking about movies in like Hollywood Cemetery, I was thinking, what's funny, I never considered that nature, but like you are
Yeah.
technically in nature, but I think calling it, I mean, quite literally,
Yeah.
circle of life, my
Yeah,
friends.
exactly.
But you know, like it's not,
Yeah, I think that's interesting.
yeah.
Outdoors versus outside. I think it's really good.
And then how do you start stepping people to something? Like, I don't think we want this to end necessarily with like, oh my God, you live a primal life and you eat 7, you know what I
No.
mean? But like, but like there is sort of a, like, what are the steps to recognizing? Do you think nature's also gotten tough for people to access in a lot of
Yeah.
cases?
Yeah, that's why I think we're trying to make it simpler in this conversation.
Yeah.
I think many people don't have access aren't able to go spend a night somewhere else.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
or
Well,
drive,
and
because
also-
like LA is also very close to nature. Toronto
Yeah.
is many big places are, but some cities aren't. Like you
Yeah.
need to get on a train for like 2 hours, and you need to blah blah blah.
Like
to be able
London?
to be like in a.
Like, how do you
Yeah.
access nature from London? I don't
London's
know.
actually
I've never
pretty
lived there.
green as a
Is it?
city,
Okay.
but again, but
Yeah.
there's some of the biggest parks, I think, urban parks in the world. I think I
Are
would
in
guess are in
London?
London. There's some really
Gotcha.
big ones.
Okay.
But people go there. They don't. You have access. The countryside, British countryside, is like
I think-
phenomenal and gorgeous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big sprawling
I think
area,
the
to your point.
simplicity is important. The
gotta make it simple.
reframing of outdoors to outside is part of that simplicity. But I also think, and it's funny just how much categories overlap with each other. But like it feels now like it's going to be expensive to be outside. Like you want to go camping,
need all
you
the
need all these
things.
things. You need the
Yeah.
stove, you need the thing.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, you actually don't. Like
No.
you need a decent pair of
It's like
shoes.
walk outside.
And like some water. I mean, you know, sure,
Like,
maybe
you
some.
know, don't get killed.
You don't like
but-
have to. We have such like a things and stuff. Like for as much as it's primal to just be in nature, I think it's now become human nature to feel like you need stuff to do stuff. Like I think we have
I
evolved
agree.
to a point where it's
for, I
holding
think
us
for
back.
men, that's part of the sex appeal. Like, I think like men of a certain age, myself included, like love gear.
Yeah, that's
love
so
gearing
true.
up.
That's
I
so
know what
true.
I mean?
There's nothing more telling than a dude's entered the midlife crisis than when they start doing triathlons, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing that requires more gears than triathlons.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like
Check
it's-
out my new goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
I got stuff for my stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
that's so true.
but
though.
you are correct, or at least I agree with you, Jesse, on like we've made it more complicated, but that's part of what we should be answering is like, how do you make it simple again? 'Cause
Yeah,
like,
yeah, no, I know.
literally, even when you live in LA, if you have a pair of shoes that's decent enough, even to walk, not even to run,
Totally.
you can go on a 2-hour walk and then get your pants off and get in the ocean.
I
Yeah.
was like, where's that going?
I
Get
mean,
in
if you
your
have a pair
underwear.
of
If you don't
Crocs, you can
have a
probably
bathing
get to
suit,
the
you get in
ocean.
your underwear in the
Yeah.
ocean.
Yeah.
And that 2-hour walk plus 5-10 minute ocean
Yeah, nature.
swim will do like you will
Change your
feel
life.
you will be another human.
Yeah,
after
how
that.
many people do you know in LA like have told you that they haven't been to the beach? Like if you don't
my
live on
wife,
You're
Yeah.
the only one.
we do not
No.
I'm
we do not go to the beach very often.
no,
At
but there's
all.
a difference
Okay.
between not going to the beach very often and I've met I think
Yeah.
one person who told me I've never been to the beach in LA.
Really?
Yeah, but then there's some people. I mean, there's a big theory about Remember back in our previous job, there was that awesome chat at some point in the company. The people were like totally anti-beach. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes,
and it
I
was
do.
really,
That
really
was
funny,
good.
and it was awesome.
Because sand sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sand sucks. Some people hate it. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sand
Yeah.
does suck, but
Yeah.
being in the ocean doesn't. So
Yeah.
No,
I don't know.
I guess part of why I brought it up is because sometimes access actually isn't the answer, because when you have it right in front of you, I actually know a lot of people in LA.
Who've never been
Maybe
to
it's
the-
because I live in an area that is, you know,
A little
more
further away.
landlocked, and tons of people I talk to in that part of LA are like, oh yeah, I like haven't been to the beach in 5 years. It seems so. And when it's that, then I'll fly to the East Coast to go to the beach, and every single time I do, I have a moment where I'm like,
What am I doing?
I actually live
Yeah.
I live by the ocean. Like, what? This is wild.
Yeah, it's true. There's so many there's a lot of things going through my head right now. First one is getting it through people's existing interests. Like you said, like 2 already, which was the video games, and then just like put movies on in interesting places. That I'm like, that's interesting. The other one too is like, who doesn't like a bike ride? Do you know what I mean? Like there's things that are also just like 25 minutes.
Left or in?
25 left.
Okay.
So we're still okay. But like, who doesn't like a bike ride? Who doesn't like, other things like that too, that are like kind of like just fun to be outside type things.
Yeah.
And is it like, do we need to invent the next great outdoor invention? Is that what we
Ooh.
need to do to get people to go outside?
I like where you're
The
going.
outdoor invention.
Like
You're
it's
talking
like
about
there
bike.
was rollerblades in the 90s.
God, I love
There was,
roller
I think there was a
skates.
bit of a scooter buzz for a little while, but scooters, I don't know.
So
if you could ever
urban outdoors. You're saying make it simple, keep urban
like just
outdoors.
as like
Okay.
a gateway.
I
Yeah.
actually think scooters is a great example, though, of I think it got a lot of people outside in cities. I mean, and I'm a big city.
I was thinking
scooterer.
razor scooters.
Oh no,
I would-
no! But like
I would-
when I go to like Berlin and other places, I always ride those scooters
Totally.
are everywhere.
Yeah.
I would push us 3 of us right now just a little bit to go beyond
Okay.
just go on your skateboard
Get out of the city.
in the concrete. No,
Yeah.
but even like just
Go into a
a
grassy
place where there's a bit of
field.
green.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Just reframe that
Yeah.
a little bit, I think. 'Cause
But do you think, and what I'm getting at is like, okay, like scooters, this, that, the other thing, but like bicycles are a good example of like, are bicycles a gateway to getting people to go to those places?
yeah, I think that's a good point.
I think so too.
I think that's a good point. And I think life on a bike, even in an urban environment, when it's safe to do so, changes your life.
Yeah.
Like there's a
I
thing
think-
that
when you're a
happened in-
kid.
There's a thing that happened in Paris actually in the last 10 years. The mayor, everybody, pretty much everyone who lived inside Paris, we call them the walls on Paris, intramuros, because there used to be like walls around the city literally. And now there's like that kind of freeway that goes around. So that's sort of considered like inside Paris. Everyone who lived inside Paris hates her, the mayor, because Paris was a construction site and probably still is for the last, I don't know how long she's been the mayor, like 6-8 years. I don't know.
Mm.
But what she was doing. And from the outside, I was coming in every summer. I was like, it's a little bit annoying, but you guys, I'm sure looking back, we'll all say she was a genius.
Mm-hmm.
And now if you look at the pollution heat map of Paris 10 years ago and today, it's like from red to yellow.
Really, eh?
It's insane. Just look it up. It's absolutely insane.
Wow.
Why? Because she basically made less space for cars and way more space for bikes. Paris is actually a small town. And if you consider it like inside, I'm talking
Mhm.
not about the metropolis.
Yeah.
So you can pretty much,
Bike
know,
across it.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
biking across it takes you a minute. But if you don't live on the
Yeah,
far out, then
yeah.
it's very easy
Yeah.
to be on a bike. And it changed people's lives. Literally.
Okay,
People are now enjoying Paris much more.
I have an idea.
The
Because-
outdoors of Paris.
Because they're outside.
Yeah.
Because they're on a bike much more. They're not stuck in traffic. They're stuck in their cars. You go through the parks. You have more trees around you.
Amazing.
You're just like, it is amazing. Like many people now don't have a car. Just get on their bikes. Rain, shine, winter, whatever. We can talk about e-bikes, whatever. That's a different conversation. We were still outside.
Yeah,
So
totally.
It
Yeah, it
really
doesn't
changed.
matter.
It really
Yeah.
changed people's lives. So I
Wow.
think, to your point, I think bicycles, yes, 100%.
Bicycles are a
LA
gateway.
needs a different urban.
Yeah, that's so true.
LA is impossible.
No, you
like I
couldn't-
admire people like when I see them on Venice Boulevard when the cars drive by at like literally 80 miles an hour. I'm like, this is insane.
It's no
This
fun.
is
Let me
insane.
tell
This is no
you,
fun.
as one of like the only people in LA who walks pretty much everywhere, it's
it's also
hard.
insane. Yeah,
It
Yeah.
is really hard.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard. And
Yeah.
it's not, people tell me they don't do it just because it's not enjoyable. Like, and you do, you're like, you have to, you're like fighting for your life out there. But you made me think about like, cause you pushed like, it's not just getting outside, it's going a little further. And I think the infrastructure and the tools like bicycles help you do that. But it also made me think that maybe there need to be more destinations. Because I
agree.
feel like
I was
part of the
thinking
thing
about
with
that.
nature
Yeah.
is it feels like you're just aimlessly existing or
You-
like wandering or just like experiencing a place in time versus like, hey, there's this beer garden and it's 5 miles outside the city. You could take this
Yeah.
bike to it, but it's a destination it's like a point for people to get to versus just being outside.
I agree. I think that's really smart. San Francisco had that. They had a
Mm.
few things like that. Like they'd have like a beer garden in Mount Tam and stuff like that, where people would be like, "Oh, have you been to that?" You know what I mean? And it was like really awesome for that. Because like you're right. Like people aren't just gonna go like, "I am going into nature and go into nature."
Yeah.
That's not how the world works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, I feel like we can crack this. I feel like there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that we're talking
Well,
about.
I think,
going into
Roman, you've
interest.
said it a few times too, though. There's different answers to different audiences. So I think,
So sorry to interrupt. Let me go back there.
yeah.
Let's start with like younger generation. I have a stat that's pretty actually sad, I guess. It's a UK stat, but I think it's safe to say it probably applies in most of the Western, most of the Northern Hemisphere at least. Only 27% of children aged 6 to 16 regularly play outside. 27%
What?
versus 71% a generation ago.
What?
Yeah, that's from
I'm not okay.
a slightly biased organization. It's called Save the Children. But yes, I
Oh,
do.
That's crazy.
So
Sorry,
how do you get
71%
27%
versus what it
versus
was.
71 a generation ago?
Good Lord.
So how do you get kids to go outside?
Make fun toys for them to play with outside.
Yeah,
You leverage their existing interests to go outside.
so gaming and everything.
Yeah. I think there's, I can't speak to, I don't know what UK culture is like with parenting, but like if this was a US problem, like there needs to be a bit of a behavioral shift too with parents and kind of like how much you want a helicopter over your parents or your
Yeah,
kids, excuse
yeah,
me.
yeah.
I think frankly that we see in this part of the world where
Yeah.
everyone wants to know where everyone is. Like the funniest thing I always find is, I'm in the middle of that like battle with my 11-year-old where she wants a phone and all her friends have phones. And when I talk to her parents, like her friends' parents about phones, sorry if you're listening, they're like, well, it just lets me know where they are. I'm like, I don't want to know where my kid is. Like I want them to go and do stuff and come back and me be like, weird, you got mud all over you, but like where you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, but you look whole.
yeah.
Like
and
you're
so
good.
like there's a
Yeah.
societal thing I think of
There
like
is.
wanting to have control that might be affecting the connection to nature because nature is inherently a little less control, right?
Can I go ahead?
Oh, no, I just have a very strong core memory of something that happened at your house once, Simon. I was standing in your kitchen and you have that like big window that
Yeah.
looks right outside and there's a tree. And your wife looked out the window and said, "Hey, Simon, whose kid is that in the tree? Should I be concerned?" And you both went, "Nah." And I thought, what a great, I don't know why it's like a very core memory for me, but I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's very
It's not
cool.
my business.
but it's not my business.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let a kid play in a tree.
Exactly.
I think, but
Totally.
anyway, it doesn't answer
Yeah.
your question,
Yeah.
but it's like, it does require a bit of a shift in parental
Yes.
behavior to
Yeah.
your point. I'm not an authority on that, but
So you're taking sort of like the logical, simple path, right? Find the centers of interest.
Yes.
Find the tools.
Yeah.
What if we took the extreme path?
okay.
go on.
What
are you
if
thinking?
you so I actually should know how it is, or I at least used to be here in the US, but I don't. But in France until probably the mid 90s, I would say mid 90s, yeah. you had to spend a whole year in service of the military at age, I think it was 18. I think
Yeah.
it was 18 to 19. It's like military service. It was called 12 months service in the military. What if you had a similar thing, but you're forced to go outside and figure out your life?
I think that might have the opposite effect.
with a group of people. Like, and I'm not saying a year, right? I'm saying
Okay.
like you have a 2-week mandatory nature trip when you're 16. It's going to
Yeah.
be funded by, I guess, a nature tax,
Yeah.
whatever, that we're all going
Was tree planting
to
a
contribute
thing
to.
in your world?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Did you
it's
guys have
basically
tree
a version
planting?
of Boy Scout without
Yeah.
like all the things I personally dislike about Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you said, it's like a version of like
I
there's a company here in LA. They're doing brilliant things. They're basically doing a version of Boy Scout without the
Yeah.
baggage. So they're basically taking the kids and then just going and like in a park, plant things, like go
Yeah.
on hikes with like
Yeah.
younger kids and do things like that
Yeah.
when the kids are just having fun. But instead of being at daycare inside or just on monkey bars,
Yeah.
you just go out in the Santa Monica
love it.
Mountains
Yeah.
and walk for like 2 hours and play and do games and things like that. So that actually is a company that exists and it's a brilliant idea. So back
Yeah.
to the extreme path. So why are you saying you think it would do the opposite?
Because I think when you pull people that so severely out of what they're comfortable with, they think that's now that's a thing.
But
you
have
have
you-
like a traumatic bond.
Maybe it's just
with
because I'm literally
nature.
watching Snowflake Mountain right now.
But have your kids been to like the camps around LA with school yet? Have they reached that age?
They've done field trips to like farms and
No, but
some
like
of
the
those
whole week?
things. Yeah, like my daughter,
Valley
for
camps
example,
and all that?
she's going away for 4 days at the end of the year, literally next week.
With school.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
That's kind
And
of
then she's also in Girl Scouts, so she did like a Girl Scout thing where they did that as well and stuff like that.
Yeah, so
and
she's
she
gonna love
loved
it.
it.
Yeah.
she loved it. You know what I mean? So that thing makes sense. But sorry, you equated it to military duty.
It's just that it was obligated. But
Okay.
then you can market obligation.
yeah,
You see what I mean? It doesn't need
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want you.
Market
I
obligation
want
as
you
experience.
to
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
to go kill a
But if
squirrel
you
in
made-
the woods.
yeah, if you made
it's more like,
1
hey,
month,
you're gonna have an awesome trip with your buddies for like a
we're
couple
gonna
of
call
weeks.
it like
Yeah.
Spirit Quest, and you're gonna go with your buddies and learn a lot about
Can I
yourself.
go on Spirit
Yeah.
Quest?
Treasure hunts and
Yeah.
geoguessr
Oh, it's
in
the
real
best.
life.
Yeah.
Wow.
And whatever.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
I think you got to make the barriers as okay. So I love that. Actually, the more I think about it, because I did that as a kid too, and it was awesome. I think part of the problem is you just need to make the barriers lower to experience it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like what you're talking about. I think what we're talking about is how do we help people build more of a connection with nature, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the goal at the end of it. And I think one is the thing that I still haven't beaten in my mind is the like use their interests and pull it in.
Yeah.
Another one is like just like drop it cold turkey and get them excited about all these things because they get to like climb ropes and climb hills and like all kids like climbing stuff. You know
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
the thing is I mean, every episode I try to think of a way to send all the kids somewhere.
Yeah,
So I'm surprised that
exactly.
I'm not the one who came up with it. But I mean, like I wonder if there is actually a certain age where it, like you're concerned, Simon, about like, does it actually have the opposite effect because you become resentful or you have like, it feels almost like a traumatic bond with nature and now
Yeah.
you think nature is bad. But I wonder if you do it at 11 instead
I
of
agree.
18,
I agree.
if it
I'm
actually
totally- I'm
always
totally
has the
there now.
positive effect,
Yeah.
because to your point, it is literally primal. Back to Roman's point at the beginning, like the minute, maybe there's 48 hours where you're like, oh, I wish I had my whatever iPad and the stuff. But then all of a sudden when you're climbing ropes, because it's human nature.
I keep so many of the problems we have right now. I keep going back to like, how do you break the convenience or comfort loop?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, that's the
I think,
society
I
we've
think it's like
created.
you wake up and it's like, well, I can just hang out on my phone and be quasi entertained for 3 hours.
but I think we're making baby steps here because
I agree.
we have ideas that are going to
Yeah.
lead you
Okay,
to like
so-
being curious. Have you guys heard of? Sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
No, you go.
Have you guys heard of land snorkeling? Shout out to G for this because he told me about it.
No, but
Have you
I
heard
already
about
want to
it?
do it.
So the first time I heard about it, I was like, I laughed and I was literally picturing someone with like,
Yeah, snorkeling.
Yeah, that's
Just, like,
100%
walking
what's
through-
in my head.
swimming on
Yeah,
concrete
yeah.
on
Yeah,
the sidewalk.
yeah.
And I was like,
Goggles
is it
and
what I
all.
think it is? And he said, yes. I'm like, no, probably not. I'm like, so I was like, you tell me. He's like, well, literally. And now it's going to make a lot of sense. It's like, it's basically just the act of being way more curious about your surroundings. I
Right.
think that's the way I would describe it. So it's like, you're going to be outside and I don't know, I'm going to walk down Culver Boulevard and I'm going to go check that tree and I'm going to check at like, well, how many branches that
Yeah.
does the tree have? And why is that leaf slightly off color than the other one? 'Cause when
Land
you snorkel,
snorkeling.
you kind of look at like
Right.
every single
Every
detail,
little
right?
detail because it's foreign.
And I think it's interesting because
That's
it's
so
first
good.
of all, I think it's total bullshit. And then I'm like, oh,
I buy that.
It's actually
I totally
interesting
buy that.
because you remark it's
Can I
again,
give
it's
you two-
packaging and marketing. It's like make land snorkeling a thing again.
That's so
and then
good.
you can imagine like whatever on dating apps, people on their profiles going about I'm a land snorkeler. And then you're gonna have like meetup groups about land snorkeling. And then you're gonna have it's not
I
a running
totally buy
club,
it.
I
it's a
love
land
it.
snorkeling club. And
Oh
then
yeah,
suddenly,
you
like,
just walk around and
more
wander.
more and more people are just walking around together, and similar to when you snorkel and
Yeah.
you're like you're trying to tap your like diving
Okay.
buddy, and you're like, look at this. You
Okay,
know,
I'm
like,
excited
hey,
about
Jesse,
this.
look-
Okay, sorry, I know you have to say something, Simon,
All
but
good.
what I love about it is like, for example, I could join a walking group right now, but the walking is tied to productivity.
Yes.
It's like we're trying
You're
to
not wandering,
exercise.
you're walking.
Exactly. There is a difference between walking and wandering.
Yeah.
And I think wandering is
Is
literally
amazing.
Oh, it's the best.
And I think if you get people to wander, you sort of solve the problem because you reintroduce the psychological, physiological benefits of nature without saying be in nature, be outdoors. Like I love you're doing what I was sort of pushing on earlier. It's like we can't keep calling it nature because it already means
No,
something
totally.
to people.
yeah.
But
yeah.
if you're like land snorkeling, which is wandering, which is being
Yeah.
in nature, and like it does it all. I'm so sold.
We're all runners, and I think one of the best things I've always loved is with running is if you're in a new town, what I'll do is I won't
Mhm.
look at where
It's the
to
best.
run. I'll just go for a run. And like, for example, from a friendly client that we all knew in Oklahoma City, I'd go for a run and then I'd come back. And when I meet that person I was working with, I'd be like, I saw this like crazy, and they'd be like,
Statue
oh, that's the this
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
thing. And you'd be like, oh, awesome. You know what I mean? It's like,
Well, you
sort
have
of
a
this
lot
really-
of confidence in your ability to navigate back to where you started.
Yeah.
Right,
I just,
yeah.
I could never. I would
There's
be
what you guys
lost.
are talking about, I think, is the how do you get people to be a little more curious?
excited
Yeah.
Like
about being
wandering.
outside
Yeah.
and checking out.
I cannot remember
curiosity.
that book. Someone will remember
So
it.
right.
It's a yellow book. It's all about curiosity. I read it a couple of years ago, and there's one thing that I remember of many things. One thing that I thought was really interesting is like you should get in the habit of every single day, even if you're just doing what you do every day. You get up, you do your thing, you
Yeah.
breakfast with your kids, you drop them off at school, you drive to work.
Yeah.
Force yourself to notice something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Curiosity is the best.
Whatever it is. Like
It is the
Like
best.
push yourself
Yeah.
to like
Yeah.
look at things and be like, even if it's just whatever. Oh, I never realized
Yeah.
like for me, it would be that traffic light was red, not green. But as a colorblind, you see what I mean? Like the most mundane thing. I never
Yeah.
realized like there was a typo on that thing. Just push yourself to be curious.
Yeah.
I think would go a long way for what we're trying to do. It goes
Man,
with like the wandering.
I'll
the
give you
land
guys like a
snorkeling,
very
and-
simple one, which is like download an app. And this might be a middle age thing. Download an app, one of those apps that can translate a bird's chirp into what kind of bird it is.
Oh,
That
God.
thing alone,
Oh,
I'll
that's
like
cool.
walk around my neighborhood and I'll be
What?
like this, and it'll be like, oh, that's
Note
a
to
so and so
self.
warbler. They're only in your neighborhood for this long
Yeah.
because they're on their way. You're like, that's amazing.
Oh, you have that app?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
There's
very
tons
cool.
of them. Yeah.
I gotta do
Merlin.
that.
Yeah, that
that's
is
the one
very
I
cool.
use.
But here's the thing that's interesting, and it drives me absolutely insane. Like I 1,000% agree. Curiosity, like notice something new. But that whole idea became mindfulness. And I feel like now even that notion has a lot of baggage. I'm not saying that's the only definition of mindfulness, but I think there's like even that it like already excludes people who are like sick of hearing about that like preciousness of like, take your head out of your phone. And so like,
Yeah.
I think you have to rebrand. That's why I love the land snorkeling thing, because it's not trying to be pretentious about curiosity. It's not trying to tell people like, you got to get your head out of your phone and notice, because when people get immediately defensive when you tell them that they're like not paying attention.
Yeah.
I think it's part of the problem with like mindfulness culture is it started from a really good place, and then even mindfulness became judgmental.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge
Yeah.
fan of mindfulness culture.
Yeah, it sucks.
There's a lot of other places. There's a lot of other societal, I don't want to call them barriers to like the nature thing too. I have a weird one as an observation as a Canadian.
I have
and
no idea
feel
where
free
this is
to-
going.
Feel free to disagree
You
with
do?
me.
No, I said I have no idea.
I'm
Okay.
curious to get your
Yeah,
take
yeah.
on this. But like in Canada, like when I was up in the Yukon and I'm totally in the middle of nowhere. When I find often in the States, nature's politicized.
Mm.
Like the second you get out of the city and you start getting into really interesting country areas, it gets very F Biden very quickly in a way that I'm also like, oh, I wonder, like, I'm not going to let that stop me or whatever. I don't really care. But I wonder if stuff like that often kind of like the us versus them of kind of the current political world makes it tougher to experience nature and so to some degree.
It's funny. I mean, and this gets a little bit off topic, but it is the same like in rural Pennsylvania.
Right.
You can imagine, especially
Yeah.
in rural Pennsylvania. But I actually pay less attention to it. Like it's not a barrier because you're sort of like
Desensitized to it.
not. I mean, maybe I'm just ignoring it.
Maybe I just see it as a Canadian.
But it's sort of like because I'm so at peace in the
That's it.
surrounding,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, well, we're all on different pages here, but we're
I'm-
sort of in a great,
Totally.
and
Yeah.
like you almost feel like you can live with both sides.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have a
No, I'm
whatever
not interested in
political
that conversation either.
conversation, but it is
Because
because
you're right.
Because
Because like the and the mindfulness is another one, which is like honestly, I that stuff makes me puke in my mouth. You know what I mean? Where it's like if we all want
It's a
to,
little
if
brutal.
we're all gonna like, you know, like go and commune. The second someone says go commune with nature, I'm like, you're not.
yeah,
my
that's what I
people.
mean. Is it's just
As opposed to like go outside and go for a walk and enjoy nature.
Yeah,
You
I
know
just
what
think
mean?
we like take every good thing and then like overwrought the shit out
I
of
know,
it, and
yeah.
then you're like, oh, we didn't need to do that. It was
Yeah.
just like curiosity. It was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we quickly go to extremes, I think, in
Yeah.
society. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, going back to like land snorkeling, which to me is basically just packaging walking outside.
Yeah, which
You
is why I
could-
love
you
it.
could
It
do that.
packages
You could have a
curiosity.
whole- you could have a whole. We could have a whole session on how do we package different outside activities to
Yeah.
make it official. Like there's this thing in Japan called forest bathing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna try to say it in Japanese, even though it's written right there. But it's like forest bathing.
Yeah.
You're basically just gonna go out in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very
Like-
good.
Yeah.
Like, and it's true that I would say, especially in the US, it has a big. You have more chances of people to do it if you package it the right way and market it.
Yeah.
Totally.
So we could probably find 10 of those. If we sat down for another 20 minutes, we'll be like, okay, we're going to do some land snorkeling.
Yeah,
do
we're
some
gonna forest bathing.
Yeah.
We're
Wow.
gonna do
Oh, I've got one.
rain laughing.
I
Yeah, exactly.
one of the things I personally like to do.
Nature shower?
mountain thought.
Yeah. I like to lay down on a hot sidewalk. Like I like to feel like I do it all the time, just like
Interesting.
laying down on like the warm ground.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I know we don't
But-
have a lot of time. Can we unpack? I do it all the time. How many people in LA have seen you just laying down?
Well,
on the
luckily I
sidewalk?
live in a building where there's a courtyard, but
Okay.
often I go into the courtyard and literally just lay on the ground on my back. And there have been a couple times where a neighbor has come out of their
Are you
apartment
okay?
and thought I was like on the ground, unconscious.
out?
But I'm like, no, I'm just feeling like the heat transfer. So I'm going to rebrand that as the sidewalk sauna.
So
And I
wait,
think people
The
are gonna-
sidewalk
this is
And
good.
I think
sauna's
people are
pretty
going to
good.
be
So
really
like
into it.
if we were like the department of get people outside, we would pay influencers with these cute little new monikers of things like you got to try forest bathing, you got to try sidewalk sauning,
Yeah.
you got to do all these things just as like a first step into getting
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
I love it.
100%.
I think that's it.
I think it's so good.
Yeah.
Guys have been land snorkeling for the last week, like
Oh, it's
every day
changed
with
my
my
life.
neighbors, and it's changed my life.
I saw the most interesting bird. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I'm sold. I'm so in
Yeah.
nature.
All right, guys, we
Okay,
have
yeah,
55
we have
seconds. So
55
I guess,
seconds,
I guess I'm
okay.
going to wrap us up.
Do a
Do
little recap, Roman.
So we talked about the brand of nature. We didn't go that deep, but I think there's a thing there. You talked about freedom, peace, and autonomy.
Yeah.
You went in a direction that was very similar, and I agree with you guys. You talked about peace a lot, in terms of
Clarity.
feeling of nature. So in the brand of nature, there's that bucket. How do you brand nature around peace,
Yeah.
freedom, autonomy? How do you talk about outside versus outdoors and not making too like inaccessible? I need all the tech, all the gear. How do you use interest to pull it up? To me,
Yes.
all of this is like from like, you know, I don't want to talk about a funnel or anything like that because it's not it, but like from like idea and
Yeah,
execution.
awareness
it's,
to-
it's
yeah,
all about
yeah.
the brand of nature, right? We talked about executionally accessible destinations. At some point, I think you riffed, what if you had a pub in the mountains or
Right,
something?
yeah,
Because
that
everything
exists.
needs
Yeah,
to
yeah,
lead
yeah,
back to
yeah.
alcohol.
Yeah.
That's for some reason.
Right now,
I-
specifically.
Today, yes.
Yeah.
we
Oh,
had
that's the alarm.
I thought a really fun, really good conversation about wonder and curiosity.
Yeah, love
Yeah.
it.
So how do you package and brand stuff? Land snorkeling, forest bathing, sidewalk saunas,
Yes.
which I think could be unpacked. Like
Yeah.
we could talk about that for a long
Yeah.
time. We had executionally a bit. I mean, I brought up that idea of like mandatory camps that you don't make seem mandatory, but at some point in your teenagers, you're gonna face nature.
yeah.
Because I think once you get
Yes,
Yeah,
so
hooked at
good.
that age,
Yeah.
at some point you get a taste
Yeah.
of it. Then at some point you're gonna want to come back to it. I think these were the big buckets, right?
Mhm.
I think we talked mostly, if you apply our thinking, it was mostly kids and adults, slightly less the elderly, which I
Yeah.
think was a very interesting bucket. We could have
Yeah.
attacked from an audience standpoint, but yeah, overall that's a summary. So
Awesome.
I think now I got to ask the question. So Jesse, do you think we cracked it?
I think we did. I do. And
Wow.
I just want you to know that you're never going to get me to be anywhere on time now because I'm going to be land snorkeling like constantly. So good luck herding me into whatever meeting we need to go to.
I think we
Si?
cracked it. I think that end bit was the big hook for me. I love coming in through existing interests, but then also rebranding simple things you can do to access nature in a way that's like right for this moment and right for specific
Yeah.
sort of demographics. I think that's genius. And I think we could definitely do it. What about you, Roman? Do you think we did it?
Well, it's funny. I think I wonder if there's a bit of a theme of like the host usually is a little more pessimistic because I've had more time to do research.
Yeah.
I think we were definitely on a really, really interesting
Yeah.
direction. I wouldn't say we cracked it all the way, but I think with a bit more time, we could make it
That's great.
I don't
a
know,
pretty
by the-
comprehensive plan.
By the end of this, you said we were now the Department of Outside. So I think if we just created like a ministry, I think we're on to something.
This is great. I think that's it, right, gang? I think
Yeah.
we did the thing.
That's it.
All right.
Let's go
Well,
outside.
let's go outside. Get outside. Hopefully you're listening to this outside. If not, go outside sometime soon. It's fantastic out there. But most importantly, listen next time. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Crack It in an Hour. Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to another episode of Crack It in an Hour. If you like the show, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. If you have questions, thoughts, or feedback, shoot us an email at hello@crackitpodcast.com or on Instagram @crackitpodcast. Music done by Michael Anastasi, cover art shot by Mick Mint, and all things audio and video taken care of by Nathan Nash. See you next time.